Expected it back. Okay. What's happening?
So I'm going to sign out and then I'm going to sign in from a different computer.
Okay, when you come back in, Gabby, raise your hand so I can see you in the participant list.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, so should I start recording already?
Should we do a recap?
Yeah, let's do a recap.
Okay. Okay. Hello and welcome to day 2 of our pre-challenge for Decide. Today is going to be a panel. So it's going to be with myself, Ashley, Bella, like the partner on my screen. And then we're also going to be joined by Gabby Joyce, and she is coming right now. We wanted to do a recap of yesterday. So yesterday we brought in inner authority. We also began to discover that maybe there might be some things that prevent you from being able to follow your inner authority. And I'm going to read some notes that I have that I'd like to use to summarize. So human design is a complex system that combines aspects of astrology, the I Ching, Kabbalah, and the chakra system, and quantum physics to offer insight into an individual's personality, talents, and potential life path. When you begin to comprehend your unique human design, or what can be thought of as your energetic blueprint, you unlock the potential for making decisions that are in harmony with your true nature. So when you go into human design, you hear a lot of talk about strategy and authority. And that concept in human design helps and guides you in your decision-making process. So your authority or your inner authority is a mechanism through which you are designed to access your intuition and your inner wisdom. And it's going to steer you away from the often noisy or confusing mental chatter. If you hang out in your head, it's going to be hard for you to come into your inner authority. Sometimes it may be aligned, but you won't know that because you're making decisions with your head. It's about learning to trust the signals and cues that your body provides, ensuring the choices you make are in sync with your innate tendencies and authentic self. One practical approach to deepen your connection with the body's wisdom is to improve your ability to act on your authority. And what we have alluded to in the previous day is that we bring in the Chinese meridian system, and more specifically, Chinese meridian stretches to work through the layers of trauma or strama or things that are imprints, conditioning that are in the body that may be preventing you from accessing that inner authority. So I'm going to pull up the slides from yesterday, and we'll just briefly, Bella, you can briefly review them. So like I mentioned, there are things that can prevent you from feeling and following your inner authority. So here's what might be veiling that. You're muted, Bella.
Before reading the points, it's huge that it's not enough to know your inner authority, right? Striding authority. If that was so easy, all of us would have been completely deconditioned by now, because if you just follow that, you are supposed to be able to flow through life and to respond to life in alignment. And I think that for all of us, whether we have been in human design for 3 weeks or 3 years or 13 years or even longer, there is still sometimes this feeling of not necessarily being able to completely connect with that inner authority, or sometimes even the feeling of not being able to trust the body. And some of the things that we see here that can veil that inner authority or that inner knowing is that there is a disconnection from the body, and that we still are using our mind to try to make logical decisions when we actually know that humans aren't logical. We are very irrational, and our decisions are irrational too, to a very large extent. Yesterday, we also spoke about some deeper imprints and conditioning. So there is, of course, the conditioning from just your upbringing, from your culture, from the people that were in your life, your parents, even your siblings. There is conditioning that's normal when you're a human being in a tribal world, you live with other people in family and community and in a collective that has certain rules, and they're conditioning you in a certain way. And then we have some of these more deep imprints that can come from this lifetime or even before, where especially the first 7 years of our lives, when we have shock or trauma or a lot of stress, we keep that in the body, in the nervous system. These are cellular memories that are there that can be quite hidden and harder to decondition. And then we said yesterday that the Venus sequence is an excellent way of starting to see these. And to know that these imprints sit in the physical, in the emotional, in the mental, and the spiritual often. They are overlapping. And to go to the most dense of those layers, which is the physical, has shown to be a very efficient way, because there are things that we can access at the more subtle, but if we don't meet it in the more dense, in the physical, in the form, then it's still possibly there hiding. And that's also why human design tells us the inner authority is never from the mind, is always from the form, from the body, from the vehicle. And then we also spoke about yesterday how we can speak about some of those things that get stuck in the imprint, in our cellular imprint. So we call them Udin moments, and that's an acronym for an event that is unexpected, dramatic, isolating, and where you feel like you have no resources. And of course, when you're a young child, that's going to be way harder to deal with, because your toolbox of how to deal with those moments is more limited. And Ashley was sharing yesterday about her son and one of those moments that could have been an imprint. There is also this knowing that, and what we are bringing forward, that we can resolve these moments maybe even before they have really found their way of kind of contract us. So it's both going back and see what's already there in the imprint, and how can we be more resourced and deal with things as soon as maybe we have one of those events. And that's also why it's so powerful to do this work in groups, in immersions, in online retreats, in in-person retreats, in one-on-one work. Like when we have somebody who's a sounding board and can help us, so that we don't push repeat just because we want resolution or completion, and we keep repeating it so that it comes up to the surface, so that we finally can get completion. And there are better ways and worse ways to do that, and faster ways of getting to the core of that. And that's what Ashley was saying before. We have chosen, or we have played with different things, of course, through human design, through Gene Keys, through body work, through therapy, through different kinds of plant medicine, or so many different things can help us address the veil, so that our blind spots become clear, so that what needs to come up to the surface comes up to the surface. And in general, it's really to be curious about what comes up. And this slide speaks about systems in the body that's not just bones and flesh and muscle, and it's a bit more subtle. So the meridian system, Chinese meridian system, which is the etherical body, the nervous system that we more and more hear about, I believe even in human design. So this is a bit of a trauma-informed way at looking at human design. What happens when somebody is not necessarily even sure about their own response to things, or their own inner authority. And then the fascial system, which is what you see to the right here, which is fascia, connective tissue. It's around every single organ, every single muscle, is the whole, it's everywhere in the body, and it's very, very important. And it has been overlooked a lot by doctors and the conventional medicine, but more and more it's starting to take its place, and we start to understand that it's really, really, really important to keep the fascia healthy. That is going to allow us to have mobility. That is going to allow us to age in a way that is much easier than if everything is dried up. It also has to do with hydration. So we'll go a bit deeper into that, but I feel that part of the dialogue today is to say, like, why is this the way? Why isn't it enough with just learning the systems and do the Venus sequence and the activation sequence and the Pearl sequence, and then you're happy and rich and evolved? So we are proposing to use the meridian stretches, which is isometric stretches that are very, very safe. It's not just elongating that we usually do when we think about stretching. It's where you're using your own resistance to start with, because all these are self stretches. There's also assisted way of doing them, but you're using your own resistance to stretch against. So there's a safe way of moving into whatever stretch we're moving into. And of course, you see here one of the meridians, which is the gallbladder meridian. So the stretch that has to do with that one is going to, in the movement that we do in the actual stretch, is going to address exactly points on this meridian. And then activation sequence is unlocking your genius, coming into core stability in the body more than anything, realizing that the second line after the slash in your profile is extremely important for how you're grounding into the world. You really, really, really want to look at that line from 1 to 6 that you have in radiance and purpose, because that's going to help you to come into core stability, and it's helping your soul to anchor in here so that you actually can live out your life mission, your life's work much more powerfully. And we can also check this challenge that's in between the life's work and the evolution as a constant challenge that might have us disconnect and run away instead of coming into deeper embodiment. So an awareness of the meridian system, an awareness of what's hidden in the body, and then still using the gene keys to look at the incarnation cross, which is really the custom that you're here to like be able, the custom that you got in this lifetime to be able to live out your purpose truly, both your doing and your being. So that's a fast recap from yesterday. And this is just a possibility of how to do it, but we'll speak more today about why those isometric stretches are so powerful, and maybe even give you some of our own experiences with them. So I'm gonna bring Gabby as well into this, and then see if we can highlight her, invite her. Hi, Gabby. Ashley, do you want to take over?
Sure.
The moderating stick.
The moderating stick. Yeah, let me see if we can get you to unmute, Gabby. There we are.
Hi. Now I'm trying to see you.
Oh, you
Can
can
you
see it?
I can't see you. Yeah.
Oh, there is something.
There's an echo.
It's probably me. Okay.
She lost us. We're going to bring in Gabby because she has actually, for her specialization for her work, she works with these stretches. She works with the meridian stretches through the system called True Body Intelligence. And so we're bringing her in to help assist us in incorporating these stretches to help you break through some of these patterns, some of the stress, some of the trauma that is held in the body. How are we at? How are we doing, Gabby? We good now?
I am. I can see you. You can see me. Yes?
You can see both of us, right?
I can see one of you at a time, who's ever talking.
Oh, are you on your phone?
Do gallery view, or no? Can you do gallery view?
I probably can.
Like the little, where it says view in the corner or somewhere.
Yeah.
Gabby's an in-person person. She's not a
It's really cool that she's
Zoomy
okay
person.
with being online though.
Yeah. So, and also the backstory is that my computer broke and I had to get a new computer. So this is the first time that I'm on this computer. So I'm just going to.
I think you have in view to the up to the corner to the right, you have speaker view instead of gallery view.
Okay.
So it's like a little grid on the top.
Okay. I'm seeing this. Meeting is now streaming.
Yep, to the all the way to the right, it'll say view, and then you click on the thing that you click on it, and then it says my view, speaker, gallery.
Yeah. That's what we would think would happen.
Otherwise, I guess you'll just see one of us at a time. Worst case.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Well, I think that this is how it's supposed to. You can change if the window is expanded. Okay, hold on.
full screen mode.
Go. Screen mode. Give me one moment.
She's going to go get assistance. Okay, so what else can we share as we set up for the panel?
Oh, I muted you just because I didn't know if you're gonna make noise. So you have to mute whenever you want to speak. Oh, the body, the body.
So this week is our pre-challenge, and next week we're actually going to be picking one of the meridian stretches, and we'll go into which one it is, which Bella did mention because in the picture it showed the gallbladder. So first, I think what we're going to want to do is introduce meridian stretches and expand on them and like what they actually do, because I know that you guys have all probably stretched, like, you know, where you like take your leg behind and you're like, okay, we're going to stretch our quads or hamstrings, whatever it is. I'm not a biologist. I don't know biology that well. So stretching and like Bella said, isometric stretching. And when we're bringing in resistance, what does that do? So we're going to talk about the benefits, and we're going to talk about like what kind of things that it can promote, if it relieves stress, if it relieves pain, because some of you are already living with pain in your body. And in a way, when you get to that point, everything is in the densest. And so the pain is a manifestation of something that used to be in the subtle realm. And now it's in the physical realm. So if you're living with chronic pain or fatigue, it's because that's been there a long time. And now it's manifested in your physical. So the stretches are going to promote better flow of energy, because what we're doing is it's almost like thinking about pipes that you have in like plumbing, right? Sometimes we get clogs in our pipes and it's like, oh, can't go this way, so we're going to divert this way. So sometimes we have clogged pipes. And what happens when you have the clogged pipes is we get stagnant and stuck energy hanging out in the area that's clogged. Hi, Gabby, are you good now?
I'm as good as it's gonna get. Yeah.
So is it speaker view still?
It doesn't matter. We're gonna keep it as is.
Okay.
It probably wasn't downloaded, and my friend here who is quite techie couldn't figure it out right now either. So we'll take care of it later. But I can see you, and then I can see everyone individually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Which is
So-
great because, right, my genius is the body. It is not tech or the computer. So we can really see my genius here.
Great. So I was just we were just talking about how pain can manifest in the body, in a way when that does happen, it's kind of like it's already gotten into the densest, it's already past like, you know, the mental, emotional, now it's gotten into the physical realm. And so when people come to you with physical pain, it's like you're like that last resort, like, I need to work with this pain. How can we relieve this pain? So I was just mentioning how like pipes and stuff in plumbing, like things can get like clogged, and then we get stagnant, stuck energy where it's clogged, and then we can't get flow happening. And so how can you connect like the flow of energy connecting to the physical body in a way, and then maybe even go back to like how you're even involved in this work too?
Yeah. Okay, so I really want to just pick up from what you said, whereas like most of us don't even know that we have this pain in our body, right? Like a lot of us are aware of what's going on upstairs, but most of us are not aware of what's going on in the subconscious. And the subconscious is below, right? That's what sub means. It means from below the head. So it's the body, right? And you were talking about imprints, right? So I made just some notes while you guys were sharing, and I wanted to share this briefly, which probably won't pop up because me and the computer today. Okay, so shock goes into the nervous system, trauma goes into the nervous system, stress goes into the nervous system, and then it maintains a part of the experience in your tissue, in your fascia, in your subconscious. Okay. So that's why sometimes we need to go further than talk therapy, further than meditation, further than understanding or having the logical responses of things. So when we talk about the bodies in general, I split them up into 4 main bodies. So we have physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. The physical body is what's on this planet, right? It's the densest, it's what you can see, it's what you can feel, it's what you can touch, right? It's tangible. Now, underneath our skin, like imagine our skin is like a sack of potatoes and it drops off of us. We have a whole system underneath us, almost like a car. Okay. So we have this whole system. And if you look underneath the hood, right, that's where all your, if you want to say your plumbing, that's where all your organs sit. Right. So yes, sometimes we need to get new tires. Great. Right. But mainly if we need something like that's major done to the car, we have to lift up the hood and we have to see what's going on underneath there. So in the torso, that is where all of our organs live. Right. And then around the torso area and the rest of our body, we have tissue, we have fascia, we have bones, we have muscles. And what we don't realize is that the tissue, the fascia, as we age, it gets dry. So if you think of like a sponge, it gets dry. And as it gets dry, so does the meridian channels. And the meridian channels are what's our chi, right? We've all heard of chi or our energy pathways in our body. And so this energy pathway, think of them like rivers, right? They're just flowing. But if something gets stuck or stagnant, then there's no room for it to flow or for it to communicate, right? So then it needs to start stealing energy from something either behind it or something around it. So we want all the organs in our body to be working at a high and sophisticated level. Right? But what we don't realize again is as we age, the tissue gets dry, the muscles get short, and the meridian channels become stagnant. Mm-hmm. So yes, can we go for acupuncture and get needles put in the meridian channels and get them open and moving? Yes, but we still will have unhealthy tissue with shock and trauma around it. So think of like the tissue of the body like a mattress, and it's like a memory foam. And what does a memory foam? It holds and stores all your stuck and stored, repressed and oppressed emotions, memories, and everything, right? That's below subconscious. So most of us are so unaware of actually how unhealthy we are until someone starts poking the bear and starts pulling apart this either fascia or even the belly of the muscle to allow for like a crack. And once there's a crack, then the light can come through. And what I even mean by light, I mean an insight, aha, a tear, a release, a shed of something, right? So that there's a successful pattern interrupt so that we can actually create change in the body, brain, and nervous system. So it's one thing to have to have information, but if there's no space and the body is unhealthy, well, it's going to be really hard to course correct even with all this information. I'll pause for a moment.
Yeah. That's so, I mean, it's so fascinating to understand how the body works. And also, like you were saying, in a way overcompensates for when like one of the systems are just not working efficiently. And I know that also with these meridian stretches, they have pairs. So there's 12 of them. And like, then they get paired, correct? Together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They have a
support.
balancing organ. Yeah. They have a support system. Yeah.
Great. Mm-hmm. And so we're bringing in the meridian stretches because what you focus on expands. And if we're focused on, let's say, the activation sequence, because that's like the first sequence, it's your sun and your earth activations. When you're focusing on these activations and incorporating the stretches, you're working with whatever trauma, stress imprints that have occurred over your life for those main 4 keys. And those 4 keys correlate to 70% of your personality. And so as we're working with 70% of your personality, especially in your life's work and evolution sphere, that's where you generally have a lot of challenge, conflict, and crisis. So if you are generating a lot of challenge, conflict, and crisis around your life's work and evolution sphere, and you're looping in the mind, it's best to break through into the body. And so when we bring these meridians in, that's where you're working with your chi, you're working with the systems that you have in your body, and you start to liberate things so that you can have breakthrough, you can have epiphanies, and you can feel the surge of energy coming back to you where something became tight. And you can even see in posture, right, Gabby, when over time people's fascia starts to dry out, or we have like a trauma that occurred and it's like now we're overcompensating in some way, right?
Yes, for sure. Your body really, you know, there's a book called The Body Keeps a Score. And then, you know, people will always be like, I got to read that book. And I'm like, well, basically it's in the name of the book. The body keeps a score. So your posture is going to also tell me and give me an idea of what's going on before you actually speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right? Because you're going to speak from mostly mind,
Mm-hmm.
idea, thought, right? Rather than leading from the body. And that's, you know, I think right? I feel why we brought this work in with your work is to get you to move actually from your body, from your heart, from your sacral, right? Rather than from the mind, which we all know that the mind could get rather corrupt. And the mind gets corrupt from an unhealthy body.
I mean, that's the corruption. The layers are not separate. The 4 layers you're speaking about are layers that are connected. So if there is corruption in one of the layers, it's going to be a corruption in the other layers too. So if the body isn't healthy, there is going to be something in all the layers. And that's also why we said from the beginning that to address it in the densest, in the tangible, is really powerful, because that has an effect on all the other layers, on the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, because yeah, that's the secret of the body. And even learning more about the DNA and cell memories and all that, we can understand that when we do it in the physical, and the work with the stretches as well, with the experience that we had last time we brought these in, and also your work, Gabby, you having done the work for yourself and yourself for over a decade, and me discovering this kind of work like 6 years ago, how we have seen things coming up in our daily life. When we work in the physical, things come up in this physical, and it's so much more powerful when things actually are there and then can be seen and felt, for them to leave, for them to integrate, for us to transcend them. And that's why I really like to do it in the physical.
Yeah.
So what kind of things can we expect to happen when we start working with these stretches, or getting into like liberating some of that energy inside of the channels? What are some of the results of it?
So I had the thought of you in my mind, which was last week we had a conversation. You were like, oh, I got down and did the glute stretch. And then I cleaned my whole entire office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
it wasn't even that I was focused on, I need to, because the glute stretch brings in, you know, determination and helps you make a decision, but I didn't even know that was a decision that I need to make. But
right.
That was the most highest priority, in a way, for my energy to be more efficient in my environment, in my space. And I rearranged the whole office, and I cleaned the whole office, and I'm still doing it. And I think that in working with the stretch, liberating that energy also changed my perception on how I was interacting with my own environment. And it actually, I got a direct representation of more energy opening up in my physical body, and then more space and energy opening up in my physical environment, because now it's way more open, super open and clean. And I think it's also showing me that's what's happening inside of you.
Exactly. So when you start cleaning up what's going on inside of you, you start cleaning up what's going on around you. It's not the other way around. That's why you can clean every single day. You can keep everything nice and shiny, but still you can't fool what's going on inside. So I love analogies. So think of your body also as an instrument. And even the finest of instruments, they have to tune up before they play. So each instrument, or rather each stretch for each meridian, it's tuning up that particular organ, that particular part of your body, and putting it into a higher frequency and vibration so that it can play better that day. And not only better that day, but then not only can it communicate better on its own, but now it can communicate better with the rest of the band, right? So it's like having a band that's all tuned up and two people came in late and they're like, I didn't have any time to tune up. And then you look over, you're like, why does this sound shitty? Right? Because they didn't tune up. So we're using these stretches, we're using the body to tune up what's going on the inside so that it helps to clean up what's going on around us. And each meridian also is associated with a certain world. So for example, I'll speak specifically to the gallbladder. The gallbladder is a mental channel. Okay. So what ended up happening was the mental chatter then started to come down. Now there was more space for you to go, okay, what's priority, right? And you didn't even have to actually think about it, go, okay, you just got up and you started cleaning it. And right now I'm in a house with two women, and every single day we're waking up and I've been teaching them the stretches. And after each stretch, I have them walk around and just observe what they're doing. And after each stretch, they both do almost the same thing without knowing that the other one's doing the same thing. But really funny, what ends up happening is everything that's out of order, they start putting in order as they're, walking around. So, and I've purposely left things out of order too, just to see what happens once they're in the field of cleaning up their body. So whereas before I would have wanted everything immaculate in the field before we actually went in, I left things out purposely to see what would happen.
So next week we're going to be doing the gallbladder stretch together. You're going to have 3 days that that Gabby's actually going to be facilitating it. Like, it's like basically we're going to the gym and we're having a class and you're going to make sure that you're doing it so that you're accountable. So you have 3 days, and then however long you continue to practice that stretch, to kind of keep a diary and see what's shifting, what's being organized. And then after all those things get out of the way, what micro decisions are you making, and how is that leading to a macro decision? Before we get into any of that, I really wanted to see, because there's 12 different meridians. I know this is probably testing you, but off the top of your head, can you connect each of the meridians to something so people have a overall view of these meridians? And then we kind of go into why we chose the gallbladder out of all 12 of them.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to start with why we chose the gallbladder over each one of them is because the gallbladder, think of the gallbladder. So the gallbladder channel is like in the glute, right? And the glutes, everyone can take your glutes right now, squeeze them and then release them, and squeeze them and release them. And every time you squeeze them, can you feel that the rest of your body has shortened, right? Your low back has clenched, even the lower legs, they've clenched, right? So the glutes, they're like the jaw to the lower body. Now, the strongest muscle in the body is the jaw, right? So we consider the glutes to be the jaw to the lower body. So if you're a tight ass, well, you're going to have a tight mind. So what we want to do is release the jaw so that the rest of the body and the mind can start to relax, to bring you actually into the present and make better decisions for your life. Because I remember reading one of the first few pages in one of the human design books, and he said something along the lines of, there's nothing worse than going through your life than making the wrong decisions over and over and over and over and over again, right? So when you're clenched, or when you have your sights set on a certain idea, you're vested. And where you're vested, you're manipulatable. So we want to release the clench on your mind to create space for something new, and also to, lead you in a more clear direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why we chose the glute.
It's a big muscle group. It's
Yeah.
big.
And it runs in like, it runs in many, many different directions, right? So, just like our minds. So, so we
So
thought,
glute, so glute is associated with gallbladder because we're saying glute and gallbladder, but they're different things. So
yeah.
why?
So we have our muscles, right? But
Mm-hmm.
through the muscles,
Mm-hmm.
we also have the channels running through our body. So for example, our bicep, when people go to the gym, they'll think of this as their bicep. I'll think of it as my heart and my lung channel. When we work on the glutes, right, that's my gallbladder channel. When I work on my quads, that's the stomach channel. So each organ, or rather each muscle, has a particular energy pathway that's going through them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So glutes and gallbladder, in this particular case, we'll associate them as the same thing.
Yeah, and I saw in the chat, some people are asking, oh, if I have this issue, what should I do? And really what we are speaking about here is a holistic system that takes in all the 12 meridians, because these are the main organs, and they're connected to elements, they're connected to sounds. Like, it's a holistic system, and it's working also with muscle. That's why if we know our muscles and we know the body, we know the meridians, it's easy for us to be like, yeah, they are the same. They're running through that. So the muscles, the fascia, like we were speaking about, and of course the nervous system, because when you create more flexibility, when you create more space, your nervous system is also going to be regulated through this. So it's definitely a holistic system that works on the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, and it gives you the opportunity to see things show up in your life, in your reality, as they are leaving those imprints that have been speaking about 2 days now. So it's the perfect confirmation for yourself that you're actually doing the work. And that's a little bit funny, because we're just doing a webinar on Neptune, which is the veil, when we don't see things clear, and we can, elude ourselves that we're doing something, we're doing the work, and actually nothing is shifting. And what's so the gratification with this is that you cannot not see or feel what's happening as you are, kind of down on the mat. But with that, I want to say too that you don't have to be fit. You barely necessarily even have to sweat when you do this. There are modifications of all the stretches, so they can be done in a way that is very gentle yet powerful. Or if you are like a yogi or an athlete, there are ways of doing them extremely hardcore too. And I was pushed to do them very, very hardcore when I started. I pulled the 2 ribs that are still actually an issue, and that was part of my own way of doing things in life. I believe the over adaptation, the perfectionism, and it was just showing me kind of how I live, and I had the opportunity to see that, and it's still healing or not, depending on. So they are powerful, and you can be 18 years old and super healthy, or you can be 67 years old and have some limitations in your movement, and still there is a way for you to do this. And that's what we, to the best of our ability too, will, depending who is going to come in with us and do the whole system. We're going to have a taste next week. It's where we also are, wanting to target it personally to each one of you, to be sure that you're able to, go through the whole thing. And some of us are going to have, Gabby, maybe we can speak a little bit about that. Just, you and I, we're different. So the things that have been challenging for you, I'm like, oh, I can just go down and do that. There's no problem for me. And then other things that for me are harder, for you are not difficult. So this also goes to show the differentiation, and that we're all unique, and that it is actually showing us where each one of us have things to work with and uncover.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is that when we take you through each stretch, you're really able to see where you have a lot of movement, and also where you're really stuck and where you're really stagnant. And the body will communicate that to you rather than the mind. It's just so obvious. Reading through the chat, I was just able to get up to that last part, that where grief, sadness, emotions are associated with the lung and large intestine meridians. speaking on that is that each organ in the body, they have high functioning characteristics and they have low functioning characteristics. And so when we're doing cleanup work, we're looking to get these lower vibrational characteristics moving out of the body. And how do we do that is by actually connecting to these organs and strengthening them and creating, you know, the movement and the chi in the body to get them to move to these higher vibrational behaviors and patterns, right? So I look at it as a simple solution for seemingly complicated problems. Yeah, like you said, where you've been stuck, I've been open, and where I've been open, you've been stuck. And yeah, the body will tell you rather than the mind will always tell you a different version of what's going on. And so that's why we're using the body to actually tell us the real story of what's going on inside.
And what's beautiful too, to combine this with human design, is that as for us that are helping to facilitate this work, we also get to see possible corruption that's there, because we know how emotional beings tend to sometimes bypass, or how open egos tend to do it, or how transpersonal profiles tend to do things in harmony or in corruption. So it's really beautiful to see. And that's something that the foundations of human design are really, really part of the work that you have been doing, Gabby, as well. It's not necessarily all the details with all the channels and all the numbers, but really aura type, inner authority, and profile is so crucial to also what you are doing. And that's why it's already from the beginning connected. And that's also so important to see, like I said, when we go from corruption to harmony, or we go from, you know, being clogged to being free.
Yeah. And as much as I'm talking too about the physical, this really is a complete system that covers the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual body, and really is also geared to working on the nervous system. And you know, just piggybacking off of the nervous system, I wrote this down as well, is that the nervous system is like a camera. It takes an electrical picture and it stores it in the subconscious, right? So again, sub, below. So we use, again, the body as a tool to bring all that up, because we have a very sophisticated way of compartmentalizing stress and where it goes, right, into the body. And so we're using this system to also break that, you know, stress up, almost like think that you're like massaging it, you're softening everything so that your body, your brain, and your nervous system can actually come back into alignment rather than feeling like they're separate parts of you. We're looking to bring everything back to one unit.
It's interesting. Well, we did found, which was where we brought in the 12 meridian stretches 2 years ago. We're going to be doing it again. So this is all preparation to introduce you to the system again, and to bring in a new way of working with the activation sequence. We'll be starting found next month. So you're all invited to that. But I started working with the gallbladder stretch again, and I hadn't done the stretch, touched the stretches since 2 years ago. Sometimes they'd come up and I'd do it, but it wasn't a consistent thing. And I know that when I did it the first time, because Bella and I were so focused on teaching, I didn't have a ton of space to be like, let me dedicate to this thing. And so it was very much physical for me, and I couldn't unpack a lot of the under the surface, the subconscious stuff. Things were coming up, but because there was a lot of responsibility and stress in my life, I didn't pay attention to that. So I would also say, when you do this next week, make sure that you're making space for the walkabout, for the walk around, to after you do the stretch, what's happening in your life. Be mindful, bring in mindfulness so that you are like getting all the juice out of this. Yes, it's going to work on the physical layer. Yes, it's going to bring up some emotional, mental, whatever it brings up, spiritual stuff. But if you can dedicate yourself this next week to focusing on it, you're going to have more of those mental insights. That doesn't mean things are not going to shift. If you're like just going about your day, things will shift. It's just you may not notice and recognize them because you just keep going about your day. But if you can, like, this week get a diary or something that you're going to devote to, like, this is how my day started, did the stretch, this is what happened after. And then what are the micro decisions that you made that lead up to this macro decision, or like what was next week like all about? Because I know for me, because I started this, I think it was last week or the week before, but it wasn't just that I reorganized and moved around my whole room. Belle and I had been focused on Pisces season and Neptune. And so that's already the subconscious realm. And there were stories and things that I had been working on for maybe this past year. And it wasn't until now that I kind of felt like the story didn't have roots anymore. And it just like, I'm like, oh, I can let it go now. Where before it was rooted. And now I'm like, So my decisions were not based on that belief anymore, because the belief came up and was like, I'm going to go. It's not really serving anymore. And like mentally, I understood why it wasn't serving, but it doesn't matter if you mentally understand it. It has root in the emotional and physical too. And so I was like, yeah, I shouldn't believe this, but somehow it's still showing up in my reality. And then things came up in my reality now that I was doing the stretches again. And it's like, okay, but consistently dedicated to every single day doing the stretch. And I have been doing the stretch every single day, with the exception of like the weekend, 2 days on the weekend. And then I went right back into it. But since I've been doing that, it's almost like I can tell that things are flowing. I can tell that my decision-making skills are being more precise. I'm not getting as like over here, over there. There's not as much distraction. It's like, what do I got to do? I got to do this. Okay. And then, and other things where it was like, I don't know if I want to make this decision. I feel like I'm not really hesitating in making these decisions. It's like, let's just do it. Let's go. And it wasn't until I started doing the stretches that we started to put this into motion too. Because I was like digging my heels and I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel it. This is this and this and that. And there was a lot of emotional content coming up for me. But now that I've been working on it, it's liberating a lot of this energy and things are getting out of the way. So as my office is clearing out and being organized, so is my insides. And it makes it easier for me to follow my strategy and authority. And even the way I'm thinking, I can tell when it's just a thought that really is not like rooted in my core. It's like, oh, that's a cool, interesting, but I don't feel it. Right. And now I can kind of have more discernment of what is really coming from me and what is coming from here, which is super important coming from someone who has like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm usually externally fixated and then I figure out the internal. Now I'm kind of like internally like grounded. And then if something comes in, I'm like, bam, not really mine. So it's been easier. That's my own personal testimonial. And that's only one stretch. We'll do that stretch. We'll do the gallbladder stretch next week. But like, if you join us for Found, there's 12 stretches that we'll do over the course of 10 weeks. And then you can take these with you. And this is something that this is Gabby's work. This is Gabby's life and her livelihood. And she generally, this is not it's like a weekend. It's like there's an intensive that you do. And there's like, you keep checking in. Like, Gabby, how do you work with your clients? It's not just a one and done thing, right? It's like, there's an introduction to it and then like maintenance, like, and usually if you're introducing them the first time, there's probably a lot of content that comes up because it's like the first time they're being introduced to these stretches, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I work with everybody individually, depending on what's going on for them and where they're at. What it usually looks like is I work for a week with somebody. We pull a ton of tension out of their body, brain, and nervous system. We get their car running more efficiently. And then from there, they have space to then create different decisions in their life. And then from there, there's a 90-day process that they're in with me. And then it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 months before they actually see me again. And then we go through another 5-day and put the next piece of the puzzle together. Or rather say, take another chunk of stress out. And that kind of happens simultaneously. It's almost like you're digging and you're putting the pieces of the house back together. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the foundation was not in integrity. And so sometimes things need to fall apart to be able to be put back together. And that's what's possible here is like you're moving more and more towards structural, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual integrity.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
happens with human design too, you know, like somewhere in our experiment, everything falls apart. And we're like, why did I start? Why did I start? Oh, well, that's part of it. When you were speaking, Ashley, I was thinking about when there's truth in your body, there's going to be truth in your life, in your reality. And I find that when we do those stretches, you know, like for me, I can see a very big difference on days I only do cardio, maybe. I mean, I still feel kind of energized and I go and I start my days, but when I do cardio and I come back home, for example, and I spend 20-30 minutes and I do the stretches, suddenly like I feel completely different in my body, and I realize that also how I am facing life and work and everything that day feels different. So for me, just understanding how we are creating truth on all levels when we start in the densest, and that this is a really cool system, because I don't really know any other thing that I can do 20 minutes a day, maybe 5 times a week, and it creates such a big difference in my experience of things. I think the truth of it is also the more straightforwardness, and like you say, some of that fog that's there and the conditioning goes away, so we become a little bit more radical, a little bit more unique in some way in the way we go about life, because there are not so many layers of like, do I do this, do I do this? No, like it's unclogged and it's like that. And, you know, some people are going to maybe react to that, but that's probably because it's kind of, you know, it's bouncing off of the non-truth or corruption that's there. So definitely starting with this, and you know, actually, you know it from last year, there are things that are going to quote unquote blow up, fall apart, fall out, and depending on who you are, it can happen more kind of quietly or more loudly. But that's what we want, right? We want to weed out what doesn't help us and bring in what's really supporting us to live a life that is more alive and fulfilled. Like that seemed to like be a no-brainer to me, at least.
And you know, it's one of those things where if you like you said, when you go to the gym, you can feel the difference between when you're just doing cardio and then when you actually do the stretches. If you wake up in the morning and you dedicate 15 to 20 minutes of turning the car on, your body is like a car, of actually giving it the fuel, giving it the energy that it actually needs, right? If you put the wrong fuel in the car, your car's not going to run correctly, right? So you get down, you activate, you speak to each one of your organs, the muscles, they wake up, and then your car runs properly, or in better alignment for that day. And you know, again, going back to that, we are physical beings. You know, look, we always have dishes, we always have laundry to do, right? Like it almost never stops. We're always going to consistently pick up stress on the daily. We're always going to have to take out the garbage, right? So like this is what we actually do for this particular vessel, is we take the stress out as it's coming in so that it doesn't pile up and then start taking our car completely off the track, or the train completely off the track. So this to me is actually like our responsibility to ourselves to not only play with ourselves, but also to play with others, right? And you know, going back to what you were saying, it's 10 to 15 minutes. You don't, you know, some people sweat because their body, it's like a detox for some people in certain organs. Some people get really cold because there's fear that's leaving the body. So there's different temperatures that will come up as well that will also reveal itself to you as to, you know, what you've been holding in. So it's a really, really cool process of, you know, taking the brain, hanging it up on the shelf, and letting your body tell you what's going on. It's a moving meditation in many ways, and really helps to connect you to source.
Yeah, and I think last year or 2 years ago, Gabby, we didn't bring in the sounds for the elements, but there's so many things we can play with, and we are still seeing and developing how we can do it in even a more powerful way this time as we go into Found, which is going to be 10 weeks. But even just to see, like we were saying, this is not a 10 weeks and never again. Like, how can we help to bring it in so that it becomes part of daily hygiene? Because that's where it really belongs. Yeah.
There was a question in the chat around more of the outcomes and testimonials. Like what are the before and afters in your experience with clients, or even when you were like training? Like what were some really cool stories that you heard in terms of like what's possible with utilizing these stretches?
Well, I'm going to talk actually about the one that I'm actually in right now. I've been working with a woman now for the last 3 weeks. It was either this or an institution. And she wasn't sick enough to be in an institution, but she also wasn't well enough uh, to maintain her basic functions throughout the day and take care of her 4 children. So when I asked her, what is it that you notice is different about you from a few weeks ago to now? She said, if I had 2 more weeks the way I was going, I'd be dead. And now she's like, I'm ready to go home. I know it's going to be an adjustment period, but I'm ready to go home. And I have a lot more clarity on the conversations that I need to have, the boundaries that I need to create for myself, and just in general feeling hope where before she felt hopeless. So that's an extreme case where, people come to me when they're really, like I said, off track. Some of you may be on track and you're just looking to get to a higher ground. And so I'm just speaking to one of the more extreme cases that I'm working with right now.
Mhm.
I would like to speak to Gene Key 12, which is Gabby's North Node. It has to do with purity. And I think you have it somewhere else as well. I think that this process has to do with Gene Key 12, which is vanity to purity. And I think that a lot of us that are into these spiritual systems, we have some kind of spiritual ego or some kind of ego, like, oh, I'm already doing so much. I'm already so aware. And part of that, I think that we are all guilty of. And what I could feel like those places where it's subtle, because I have arrogance, it's one of my shadows. And I often say that to you, arrogance is always going to come up in my life. So where I also see that this system is really, really efficient is that where we feel like we're already good, this is going to show us where we have some kind of compensation, whether that is psychologically, physically, emotionally, some kind of compensation, some kind of twist, but we don't want to look at it. We want to think that we're already really good and we already did so much work on the inner child and this and that. But this, we can't fool ourselves with this system. It's going to come out. I pulled out my ribs and that was part of how I have been banging my head against the wall so many times in my life. So I really like how it shows us the places that we don't want to look at. And I think that that's part of, the hard thing with this work, but also the thing that is so gratifying that, okay, I was blind, and then you have to die to your own ego. I mean, that's my, like, okay, I guess it's shown to me, so I get to accept it and I get to move beyond it. So what is true purity? And there's always layers, and the more we dare to see our ego and see those corruptions in the eye, and push through them. And that's also why, just in a physical sense, in a very practical sense, to push through resistance. These are isometric stretches. They're very safe because you're pushing through your own resistance. And you get to lean in and feel all that's there and allow it to not be a twist anymore, but to open. So this is really about opening, leaning in deeper, becoming more resilient in a flexible way, not in a pushing, hard, forcing way.
Mhm.
But again, we can sit here and speak forever about it. So what we thought this year, instead of just having those panels where we speak to you about it, we wanted to give you at least the possibility, one stretch, to come in next week and do it with us. And hopefully we're going to be able to as well, have a bit of a modification of that one, because the one we have chosen is a little bit challenging, I would say. I love it as well. I would, definitely, I was part of saying, let's start with this one. But let's make sure that everybody who wants to be with us can get out something of it. And yeah, this is really to show that we need to do it in order to know what it's like. Speaking about something can be interesting, but it doesn't necessarily lead anywhere.
And you want to do it in a way that it activates the meridian. Like with different stretches, you can do it in a weird way that it's not really touching that muscle group because you have incorrect posture, or you're doing it the wrong way. So I think too, if you can come to the Zoom calls with us, Gabby's going to introduce it. She's going to show you how to do it. And then if you're on camera, because it's going to be meeting style, she'll be able to gaze and just be like, how is everybody doing with it and who needs a modification? And it's better by the end of the 3 days that you know how to utilize the stretch to continue it and see the transformation. And then like potentially you can come with us in the found journey, or you can reach out to Gabby because it's something that you really want to, go in more deeply with, and you know that one-on-one support is necessary or needed for that.
With a meeting style, I guess we can do meetings. We were gonna change it possibly to meeting style. I mean, let's.
I think afterwards we were talking about the first time probably to make
Yeah.
it clean, we're going to introduce it, but otherwise making sure there's enough modifications so that you guys know that you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, so let's see, Gab, is there anything else that you feel is important to say to like bring this conversation to an end before we tell people about tomorrow and a few other things? Is there anything else that you feel like we haven't mentioned that's important the first time many of you that are here hear about this?
You need this even if you think that you don't.
That's what I was saying. It's so easy to be like, no, I'm so good already.
You need this even if you think that you don't, because like you said, it exposes you where you need to be exposed, and it shows you the things that you cannot see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's humbling, and it is exhilarating. And again, it's the reason why I have dedicated the last decade of my life to the system and taking the system and working on other people with the system is because it works. And like I said, it's our responsibility to do our own cleanup work. I'm not going to clean you up. You're not going to clean somebody else up. It's our responsibility to do our own tune-up work so that we can play well with ourselves and play well with others. And if you're here for alignment and for your divine purpose, then this really is something that cannot be overlooked. And if you think that you've done something like this before, you have not. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. And most people say that once they're in it is like, oh, this looks like a stretch that I've done before. Oh, this looks like the yoga stretch. And then you get into it and it's like peeling an onion. The first time you get into it, you may not really understand the position. You may not have all these ahas, but the more you keep doing it, the more you keep digging. I mean, again, 12 years later, I'm still using the same stretches, but I'm using them differently because I'm different. So what I love about it is something that we've talked about before, Bella and Ashley, is we're looking really to bring simplicity, right? Simplicity to your life, simplicity to how to tune your body up from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is as simple as it gets, even though it may sound complicated. It's as simple as it gets.
Yes, and for all those of you that want to have like human design orgasms right now, so 23 simplicity is Gabby's vocation and it's my Chiron, and Gabby has 62, which is precision in her Mars, and my North Node is precision. So of course we're going to meet with our 23 and our 62 to simplify and get really precise. And 23 is a Taurus gate, so it goes deep into the body. We also have a conjunction this year between Jupiter and Uranus. These two very, very powerful planets in gate 23 on April 20th. So we are going to be doing those stretches as we have this very, very powerful conjunction where there are going to be 4 planets in 51, which is the gate of initiation. So if there is one good time to do this, I believe it's now. And simplicity has been coming up for me so much. And there are so many people actually also in our community, people Ashley and I have worked with one-on-one that have that 23 either as the vocation or in some important place. So I feel, yeah, simplicity is so important, and precision, because you can do like, oh, I do this stretch like this, but the precision of it is also super, super important and worth mentioning when it comes to this. And that is also why we're bringing in you, Gabrielle, because I am using this for myself in my life. I have done part of this work in the inner circle with other people, like one-on-one. with friends and sometimes with clients, but I don't have the precision and the proficiency and the 5-1-ness of doing this work. And I'm much more like somebody who works with the emotional and the darkness and the feminine in that sense than with just the plain not in a bad sense, but the very physical. And that is your genius. And that's really why, we're bringing you in. We seldom bring in somebody for a whole entire thing from A to Z, but that's where you're with us from A to Z, because this is really your genius, Gabby. And it's so cool to be able to offer the challenge next week with you, and then even more deeper work after that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah, and I believe, if I could add to that too, is I have the left cross angle of refinement. So I find all these, if you want to say, modalities, and then I refine them again to make them simpler, for more simple for your life, right? Because nobody wants to be spending an hour or two a day tuning themselves up, right? What if we could literally tune ourselves up within 3 to 5 minutes, right? So that's really what I'm looking to do, is how can we simplify, how can I refine each system to make it more potent and also more tangible. And I believe that is one of the other reasons why you guys brought me in as well. So thank
Yeah,
you.
and that's really the part too that we want to drive home. Like, incarnation cross is so important. So the same way that Gab is role modeling how to step into that left angle cross of refinement, like how am I showing how to step into the cross of the Sphinx and that kind of direction? How is actually showing the cross of the planes, of being able to actually be in this reality and bring in emotion, everything that's there. And each one of you that kind of come with us, how can we support you and each other to really embody that cross and to be the role models that we need for this shift that's going to happen with 2027, where we all need to start tuning up so that we can be truly the role models that we came here to be.
Yeah. And with that, I don't know if there's anything else that we need to share on that, except for please make sure that you're registered, that you're in the Facebook group, that you have the Zoom link. The Zoom link remains the same for next week. Monday will just be orienting with the challenge and deciding what's that big decision that you need to make, or what's that thing that you find yourself like wavering on, and know that maybe at the end of the week you'll decide, you'll have that decision made, or you'll make these micro decisions that are getting you closer to actually making a shift in determination to go in a direction. If Gabby's helping you to refine, and Bella's helping you to find your compass and go in a direction, and I'm helping you to kind of like find this piece of being within yourself amidst all the emotional turbulent chaos that's in your life and in yourself, then we're coming together to help you sort through all the shit that's inside of you, so you can find your compass, find your direction, simplify, so you're like, I'm on this mission, this is where I'm going, I can't be wavered or swayed. And that's what's going to get you in 2027. There's not going to be as much support, and I don't want to go into doom and gloom, but you've got to go into your core stability now or never. Like, do it now, so that you are not victimized. And we're in the transit of the 55. You want to be free. And that's an internal state. It doesn't need to be dictated by your external reality. So how can you create more and more freedom within yourself? These stretches are going to liberate that freedom for you. This is working on the physical, emotional, mental, physical, whatever, spiritual. So I hope that you'll join us.
And tomorrow, Ashley, we're going in to look a little bit more at the incarnation cross, the radiance and the purpose, which are so important for your core stability and your health. And we're actually going to be generous and actually look at some charts. So if you come tomorrow, bring your Gene Key chart, your human design chart, whatever you want to bring, and Ashley and I'll play with you and start to unpacking that core stability part for you. And it's also to decide about radiant health, right? And core stability, that's a choice as well, or a priority in our life that we can choose or not choose.
Mm-hmm. So tomorrow it'll be at the same time, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, and we're deciding to choose radiant health and core stability. So like Bella said, it's going to be focused on your radiant sphere and your purpose sphere. And we'll be looking at your chart and probably looking at the incarnation cross, because that's where we're going and found. So making sure we touched base on your inner authority, touched base on your body, like choosing to let your body lead, touch base on that incarnation cross, your activation sequence, it's the same thing, and choosing that radiant health and core stability. And the pathway of that is uncovering, understanding who you are and your genius, unlocking that genius through the body, through liberating what's stuck inside the body that needs a channel and access and alignment.
Yay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Gabby, and
you.
thank you, Bella, and thank you all.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having me. It was lovely speaking with all of you.
Yes. We'll see more of you next week,
Yes.
Gabby.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.